So why don't we start this meeting? Is that okay?
Sounds good.
Am I driving the agenda?
Share the agenda.
Okay. Am I driving this agenda this evening?
I'll introduce you. I'm Roger Rayle. I'm chair of CARD and chair of Site Residents for Safe Water. And welcome to the October CARD meeting. I'm going to share the agenda here if I can find it. This is it. So this meeting is being recorded and will be posted publicly. If you have anything that you want to say that you don't want to say on camera, let us know and we'll either stop the recording and restart it, or we'll cut it out of the final one before it gets shared publicly. So I'm going to turn it over to Jack, our new executive director as of last month, to run the meeting.
Thank you, Roger. Jack. Thank you so much. So now we need to approve the September minutes. This is a vote just by board members. All those in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye. So moved.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, those are approved. We'll move on to the election of officers. The nominations were due a week ago or so, and it looks as if the current members are unopposed. And so I want to make this a quick election. Does everybody know whether they're eligible to vote or not?
Bring up the list.
So we should reiterate the rules.
So only members, and I'm going to post a.
Well, it has to be 3 of the, what is it?
Last 5.
Beth, 3 of the last 5 meetings.
Yes.
To be eligible to vote.
And I have a list here, but I figured that it's not going to come to that. Hopefully we all just say
unanimous consent.
Unanimous. But what I'll do is I'll take screenshots of everybody with their hands raised, just so I'll know.
Well,
I should stop sharing the screen so you can see it full screen. I think everybody's on the screen now.
Yep.
Except for the people that don't have their cameras on.
Okay. So because there's no real opposition to any one of the incumbents, I just need to ask if anybody who is eligible to vote intends to vote no on any of these candidates. And if not, we can just do it by a claim. So is there anybody who is opposed to any of these nominees? Understanding that, all in favor of the nominated candidates, please say yes and raise your hand.
Yes.
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 Okay, I'm just going to ask for no's just as a matter of form. Any no votes? Okay. The board is re-elected and we'll move on to old business at this time. Item 4A is to ask Dan Hamel and Josh Moser if they could inform us about modifications to the confidentiality agreement that the court ordered a couple of years ago, as I recall.
Yeah, the confidentiality agreement was, I believe, in 2016 when negotiations started on the 4th amended CJ. And as far as Josh is not here tonight, but we have talked about it. EGLE's response to your question there is we have asked Gelman to voluntarily release data and information from my level up to Brian's level, the AG, and the Gelman has declined to voluntarily release the data. So Josh wanted me to inform you tonight that EGLE plans to formally ask Gelman to release data and information under statute authority that we have under Part 201. Basically, that's identified in 20117. So that involves with the AG and the team, the Gelman team that we have. So, wanted me to confirm that we will make that an official request and not a informal request. A formal request we will pass that on to Gelman. Now, that process, I can't give a date when that would occur. I will tell you that it's right now we're concentrating on, the AG's concentrating on submittal on October 25th of our brief. I think there's a brief, our brief, the EGLE brief related to the appeals, Gelman's appeal documents that were submitted 30 days, 40 or so ago. And I think the interveners also have that October 25th submittal date. I'm sure they're working on their brief for that. So after that, we will be working together to submit that a request under our statute authority.
So
go ahead. I was Jack, then Kathy Griswold, and then Kathy Knoll.
So that I'm clear on this, there will be a formal request, but will there be a request to the judge to modify his order?
There'll be a request to the judge. No, not at this time. To modify that. That request, as I understand it, again, Jack, I'm not the legal side of things. That request really has to come from everybody. It was a signed confidentiality agreement among the negotiating parties.
It was a consent agreement. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Kathy?
Which one?
Kathy Griswold? I'm not picking favorites.
I just wanted to ask Dan or anyone in the room, is there anything that the interveners can do at this time? And maybe Kathy Knoll has more information about that. I just want to make sure if we can add support or provide a letter of support that we request that of our attorneys, whatever we can do to help you.
I haven't, Brian, we didn't talk about specifics of assistance. I know, what we have to do with the statutory, with the statute authority we have, it has to come from us under part.
Mhm.
So I can get that, request or ask our team here and see if there's anything that the interveners can do to assist us in that formal request for data and information.
Okay, thanks.
Kathy Knoll?
Yes, I spoke to Bill Stapleton today, and he will be following up on this. He wants me to clarify exactly what information we want in terms of, yes, we want the confidentiality agreement lifted related to data, but let's be clear on what data we are requesting now. So I wanted to get feedback from Roger on that and others.
Well, before we move to Roger's reply to that, Dan, over the last few months, you have expressed the opinion that you were blocked from giving us certain data or information based on that. Would you be willing to compile just an informal list of things that you think you can't tell us because of the confidentiality order?
Let me check with my legal, the AG, with Brian.
Okay.
That's something, as part of, as I understand, as part of our formal request, we would have specific items, that we know about, or want.
Okay.
And
Thank you. I appreciate that very much. Roger, do you have a response to Kathy?
Well, the blurb I sent out today about TW24, the new purge well, that its well log says was installed in 2017. We don't have any information about which well permit that this is associated with. We don't have any information of whether there was vertical sampling during the drilling of that well. We do know that when they started purging and sampled it, they got 1900, 1800, and 2100 parts per billion, well outside of where any of the public maps from Gelman show that high of concentration. So I would say any data relating to Gelman's dioxane in our waters of the state, or any of the relating to any remediation, monitoring or remediation of that. So
Okay.
that's how I would start off encompassing. I mean, data is data. They shouldn't be able to keep secret information about their dioxane in our waters of the state. And here they've apparently done that for several months, if not years.
So your starting point is everything.
Everything relating to their dioxane in our waters of the state.
I kid. Jeff Hayner.
Just real quick, when you said part 20117, I was going to put it in the chats, but I couldn't find the actual language online. Is that, what's that referring to, Dan? I just wanted to look it up.
Act 450, Part 201 of Act 451 of 1994. It's listed.
Part 17?
No, it would be listed as the official number, would be 324.20117.
Okay, thanks.
I've
I've taken up reading code, if you can believe that.
Yeah.
I just like looking at it. Thank you.
Yeah, it'd be 20117. But it has the 324 is the actual MCL, the whole number, or the not MCL, but the what isn't that Michigan, whatever it is, law. But it's Act 201. I mean, Part 201 of Act 450.
So that's the environmental cleanup standard for the state of Michigan.
Natural Resources and Environmental Protection Act, 451 of 1994, and it's under 324.20117. And that gives the statute, that identifies the statute, the authority that EGLE has requesting information, and plus other stuff like information be furnished, requirements, right to enter public or private property, purposes, duties of a person entering public, private property, copies of sample analysis, photographs, videotapes. So it identifies what we have the authority to request.
Okay, so
Thank you. I'll just stick it in the notes.
Okay.
Going through item 4A. So then my understanding is that the Attorney General has not made clear yet whether or not they would join the intervener attorneys in asking for a modification to the confidentiality order. Is that a
right? That commitment has not been made at this point. Well, what EGLE is committed to is to go through our statute, our authority to request, formally request the information.
So can EGLE actually circumvent a court order? Or is it only if Gelman agrees to release that information?
I want to manage expectations here. I believe you can bet just by what the information, when I requested and when Brian requested it, that Gelman is going to, like I've said, they've refused to do that informally, and they've identified that they will, for the formal request, will also do refuse, and basically will litigate that request. So now you're getting outside of what my experience has done, as with EGLE, of what that means really. How do you go to the court? Is it the current judge? How do you do it? If they litigate it. But I want to manage expectations. It's going to be my understanding, it will take a while.
Absolutely. And so,
does Gelman have data that EGLE does not have?
we believe that that's, that, I mean, it's just, we just received the boring log for TW24. Roger had a question on it. I only received that in September. So.
Okay. So I'm going to call on Mike.
Dan, when this was discussed with the Attorney General, was the discussion around waiving or setting aside the confidentiality agreement in total? So it would have to do with the discussions and everything else, or was there a discussion about, as I was talking about last week, being required to release only all data regarding the presence or absence of dioxin, testing data, all testing data regarding dioxin in the waters of the state?
The discussion that I've been involved in was data and data.
Okay.
And past that, the data that is available, which again, that under that 201.17, there, it spells out in there, and I haven't gone line by line, but it really seems to more relate to data and that type of information in 201.17.
Thanks.
So then to conclude item 4A, it says, should CARG write a resolution? I tend to agree with Marcia in the chat window that in fact we should pass a resolution maybe at our next meeting asking the interveners and the Attorney General's office to seek a modification of that confidentiality agreement. Is there anybody who has an opposing point of view on that? So is there any?
I just wanted to I wanted to ask one more question about this.
I'm sorry, I apologize.
Does the confidentiality agreement give Gelman permission to break the law or avoid or violate regulations?
Well, again, you're outside my expertise, but the whole idea about the confidentiality agreement, at least up front, was so information is made available to the negotiating team, but not made available to the public. And I'm not sure they are breaking the law if there is a confidentiality agreement from an entity like the court. So again, that's my opinion. I would have to get clarification or from the AG whether that's really the confidentiality. What you're asking for, Roger, is that confidentiality agreement breaking the law?
Well, or I guess it's really asking what somebody brought up earlier was, does 201 take precedent over other laws?
Well, Roger, as we are going through right now with our MS4 problem, they have to kind of mesh together, and sometimes they don't mesh very well together. So with that said, whether it takes precedent or does the court take precedent? We kind of have been having CJs, amended CJs as a top tier, as I understand it, of the regulating entity, what regulates this site, with using 201 underneath, the requirements of 201. But the court really is the now that it's in court and has CJs, the court is now the top of that regulating requirements.
Yeah, well, it's not a good look for Gelman and for Danaher, its owner, to hide data from the public.
Unfortunately,
I'd like to see Danaher getting back to the attitude that Kim Davis had when he was in charge of the cleanup for Gelman, when he said to a public group, "We're doing what we're doing because it's the right thing to do. We're doing what we're doing because it's the right thing to do. Hiding data from the public is not the right thing to do." I'll shut up at this point.
So unfortunately, the confidentiality order says that all discussions, statements, positions taken, and any documents, data, or other information exchanged among the parties during settlement negotiations shall be considered confidential. It goes on at length, but basically confidential. So they have the
Go on forever.
they have the technical argument that if they gave it to anybody else during the negotiations, that it's forever confidential. And I think that's I think that the judge would not necessarily buy into that. So, but we're going to move on. But first, I want to ask for volunteers to try to draft a resolution asking the Attorney General and the intervener attorneys to seek a modification of the confidentiality order. Don't all speak at once. We'll have to work on that later. Moving on to B4, or 4B, I mean. Is Evan here today?
I don't, well, I
No.
don't think he was told, we told me, I didn't think in an email that he probably wouldn't be able to attend.
Okay. Can you speak to this item then, Dan?
Yeah, I can tell you what, basically EGLE, w.r.t, Christy Alwyn is scheduling with Evan. And RRD will be involved. We're planning, a meeting for the next steps. We had an internal meeting and we're going to be talking with Evan as the next steps in implementing basically there's an existing MS4 Allen Creek Drain sampling work plan that Gelman has submitted some time ago, and they have not implemented that. So we have informally asked them to do that. So has WRD, but we're going to be, the next step is to meet with Evan and see what as the group, our next steps would be as the regulators. Evan, he holds the permit. So any action has to involve him as the permit holder. So that's what's planned. I do not have a date for that meeting. I know that she's been trying to get that here in the near, has been for last week or so, week or two.
Yeah, as I asked at the last meeting and the meeting before that, somebody from CARD should attend. I would volunteer to do that. I think CARD is responsible for this violation being discovered. When we asked for samples being taken at West Park and Chapin Street and 8th Street, Slauson Middle School, when EGLE was not willing and Gelman was not willing to put in permanent wells. So we asked for basic, simple, quick and dirty tests that came back positive. Now we're at 49 part per billion at West Park. So I think somebody from CARD should attend. Like I said, as part of the Allen Creek group and the CARD group, I would volunteer to attend. Anybody else could as well, I would imagine. So I'm reiterating that request.
I want to manage expectations here.
It's an open meeting, I think.
Well, it is among the regulators, and it's not necessarily, manage expectations. I don't know if it is a requirement to be open. So we have, I am not going to say that yes, we will invite out, other people, but that's the plan right now is among.
Well, maybe we should contact Joe Moser and find out if it's an open meeting or not. I think it should be. This is our water. This is our discovery. This is our city. And I think we need to have somebody at the table to make sure the right thing is done.
So perhaps, Vince, you could reach out to Evan Pratt and ask him if he is amenable to such attendance. But before we move forward on further discussion of this, Dan mentioned a work plan. Can you remind me, is that work plan publicly available?
Yeah, it's on the webpage.
Okay, thank you so much. I couldn't remember. Thank you.
Yeah, that work plan is on the webpage, and then the previous one, which was the prohibition zone expansion, the well ID work plan, is kind of on the webpage too.
So any more discussion on that matter? Is Patty here for Tetra Tech?
I am.
Can you tell us about the Allen Creek groundwater sampling?
Sure. I just got in the preliminary data. We're trying to get the report together to get it out to everybody as soon as possible. We did have, we had collected from 2 locations along the Allen Creek drain. Outside though, we're talking groundwater outside the drain. One was detected at less than 1 part per billion. That was, it was west of 7th Street along Huron. And the other location is, was non-detect, that is in West Park, closer to 7th Street. So once I get that all together, it will be distributed while the soil borings and the report.
Thank you so much. Any
You're
questions
welcome.
or response to that report? Seeing none, I'm going to move on to 4C. It's Patty again, an update on the Ann Arbor wet basement testing.
Yeah, we haven't had any wet basements. We've had some requests, but not enough water, unfortunately. So if the rain continues, we may get some. So they've been in the last month, so nothing yet.
Thank you. Any comments on that? Moving right along to 4D. Is Dan here this evening?
The other Dan, right?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, too many Dans. Dan Bicknell.
He's not on the screen, so.
Already.
No.
So, Patty, do you know anything about them contracting with someone other than you on this matter?
You know what? I don't have any updates on that. I apologize. I didn't even think about reaching out.
I mean, it's not you, so I understand it clearly. And so, unless someone has something further to say about this, we'll move right along as well. 4E, that's me. There's really not much to update. There was a mention of a due date for briefs in the appeals court. And I look forward to seeing those when they become public. Any comment on 4E?
Yes, I do. Will the interveners be trying to seek some of the poison pills to be omitted in somehow, someday, somewhere, some way?
Not in this particular process. Right now, what's before the Court of Appeals is the June 1st order of the Circuit Court, which adopted the fourth consent judgment. And it's kind of an up or down on that. But also they'll probably be considering whether this idea of quarterly meetings and future modifications to the order will be permissible.
What about the interveners, though, who all were opposed to certain aspects? Are their attorneys going to try to get, because supposedly Stephen Postema posted that the NPDS permit, which Dan hasn't gotten there yet, maybe, they've applied for one for the Park Lake well. And I mean, this is just something where why aren't we asking to have that pulled altogether or have them pipe it differently, a different method of discharge?
So appellate work works this way. You can only argue to the Court of Appeals those matters that you argue to the trial court. And you and I share the disappointment that our intervener attorneys didn't argue all of the poison pills in the consent judgment, but they rather let it go through as it currently exists. So that's all that's before the Court of Appeals currently. Did you say that they have applied for a discharge permit into the Sister Lake?
That's what Stephen Postema on his update to City Council that was for the public. I saw it when he said, he's called it the Western area though. So it might have gone over a lot of council members' and he didn't call it the First Sister Lake discharge. It's called, the Park Lake well.
So I think Kathy Knoll has some insight here.
Yeah, so I understood it from talking to Bill Stapleton today. The NPDES permit has not been applied for yet. But let's clarify. We have Dan here. We can clarify with him.
Yeah, I can give you an update on that. Basically, I keep in touch with Gelman and their implementation of the fourth amended CJ order, the judge's order. And in that order, Jack is right. That order spells out that an NPDES permit will be applied for discharge into the First Sister Lake. That drives the installation of the Park Lake well as identified in the order. That they are working on that permit. They have not submitted it as of yet, but they are working on it because they have been, that order requires them to, is an order from the judge to implement all the bullets that are in, the fourth amended order. And so that will be coming up. I don't have a date when that permit will be submitted to w.r.t, but then it will go through the permit review process of a new NPDES permit, which includes, their evaluation, request for additional information, and then public comment, the whole spiel. But they are, working on it, and until that, as required under the order, we'll submit that.
So if you could remind me, the expired discharge permit that they are seeking has not yet been approved. Is that correct?
That is correct. That's been a separate issue. It's been ongoing.
But that was a separate, or the postponement or delay of that, I believe, was due to the fourth CJ.
But my point here is that those permits are not crafted easily or quickly, and so we will learn when they do apply for it, and then it will take a period of time for them to work through the process.
Well, not necessarily though, Jack. I think that one was just delayed extremely due to the fourth CJ being delayed and worked on all that time. Because we were preparing for this 2 years ago as a team. We had a subgroup, and I mean, it could go fast, right, Dan?
Yeah, and that's w.r.t. So I don't know that process, their permits process for NPDES. You're outside my experience. So, but
Patty, what do you think, Patty, with your experience? Sometimes they are quickly done, and
my experience is the ones that are quickly done are very simple permits.
Yeah, very simple.
Like you're sending water through a pipe.
Yep.
A hydrostatic test, like you just installed a pipe and you need to, sign off that it's clean. Not something like this. These usually take quite a bit of time.
w.r.t promised us a public hearing on this, so it's not going to go that quick. It's going to have to be at least 30 days.
Kathy Griswold?
I just want to remind everyone that this was the main reason that the interveners and the community did not support the fourth CJ. So I know that it's required in the fourth CJ for Gelman to go through this process, but I'm wondering, do we wait until the public hearing to have a major protest and do whatever is necessary to prevent discharge into the First Sister Lake? Or do we start doing something now, or at least organizing? Because to discharge into the First Sister Lake goes against not just public opinion, but what our constituents made very, very clear that they would accept, and they will not accept this. So
our values. And
yes, community values. And so when do we intervene?
Right. And I feel like Judge Connors didn't intend for this to happen either. He clearly said to Roger, where we all heard it, No, this doesn't include any of the poison pills. We'll leave those out. Remember? We all heard him
Yes.
say that.
So
But then
I'm gonna take exception with that, because he may have said that at that hearing, but the order that he actually entered was different than what he observed there. And none of the intervener attorneys insisted that he follow through on the point that you're making. I would also point out that if the polluter doesn't get this discharge permit, they're relieved of the obligation to install that extraction well. And so they're cool with not putting water into your lake, because it completely relieves them of the obligation of installing that extraction well and doing anything to the north. So I believe it's going to be slow. Nobody's going to insist that they do this, because it is a matter of contention, but it is in the order. And so I just want to be really clear on that, that if they proceed on seeking that discharge permit, it's consistent with what the judge told them to do.
Can I jump in here for a second?
Absolutely. I take it that's Ralph.
Yeah, Ralph McKee. When I spoke to Bill Stapleton about this issue after that order had been entered at some length, and I raised this point, and it was really the sort of the focus of our discussion. And his comment was this. He said, well, when we get to that point, if the permit isn't approved, we'll ask the judge to order that the extraction well be installed anyway. I said, won't the Gelman people just point at the order and say, you submitted this order, this is your order, not ours, we didn't want this, but you submitted it. And you know, the judge will have to look at Stapleton at that point. And I said, well, what are you going to say when the judge says he's right? You put this order in and gave it to me to sign, and I did. And his comment was, well, you know, the argument would be, oh, the circumstances would have changed or what have you, and like it would be a whole new kettle of fish. And my comment along the lines of, you know, good luck with that. I just, you know, that was his whole defense of that whole thing, was that, and if it flipped the other way, if the, you know, that we could also, if they got the permit, then you could somehow go back and say, oh, no, you can't actually do that, and ask the judge to change the order at that point. And none of that made any sense to me, and not then or now. And I'm curious what the EGLE people's opinion is about that, because this is the, you know, I don't know if there's any EGLE, if I'm calling from outside. I don't have a Zoom, just talking. You know, what's your take on that? That the wetlands will be flat destroyed. We all know that. And so, or we'll lose the biggest extraction well in the whole process. So what are you going to do when that happens? Because that is what's going to happen. One of those two things is going to be what Gelman will say should happen. Either we get the permit and we dump the water in the lake, or we don't get the permit and we don't do the well. Those are the choices. What are you going to do when that happens? I'm waiting.
Well, we would still try to get an extraction well in that location, because it was chosen as a key location because of concentrations in that area, a hot spot. Again,
I get that. What's your answer to the judge when he says you put this order in that says it's one or the other here? You advocated for that order.
Right, it was mutually agreed upon.
No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking, it wasn't mutually agreed by the entire public, and the three interveners
Mutually,
all said no, and the judge ordered it. So what are you going to do besides beg when this comes down?
I don't have an answer for you tonight.
Okay, all right. That's an open question, and I'd like to hear what your answer is. Sooner or later, it's going to happen, so you should be thinking about it now.
I have an answer to that. And that is, they could still put the well in. They just need to have a way to dispose of the water without dumping it in to the second sister lake.
Put in a pipe.
They can put a pipeline in. They've done that before. And they can put a pipeline in that can be monitored, unlike their pipeline from Evergreen that couldn't be monitored, and it broke, and it discharged high levels of dioxane into an area that wasn't high levels of dioxane.
I'm going to point out that we're dealing with Gelman, and Gelman's not going to do anything that they haven't been ordered to do. And unfortunately, the interveners and the Attorney General's office allowed this form of the consent judgment to be entered as an order without protest. And it's now in the order that Gelman doesn't have to do anything with regard to that extraction well if they can't get a discharge permit that we don't want them to get. So we really are kind of stuck in that precarious position where they're only going to do what they're ordered to do. They've been ordered to do this on a contingent basis of getting the discharge permit. And if they don't get the permit, and we don't want them to, that they don't have to do anything at all. And then there's no subsequent order there. And so we're going to have to seek a modification, which is going to be as troublesome as everything else we've gone through with this particular polluter. I think
how about if they had a permit to put it into a pipe instead of putting it into Sisters Lake?
That's not what the order said.
These are all great practical solutions, and they all work, but that's not what the court order says. Mm-hmm. And the court order controls. That's the problem.
So there's no way to have a pipe substitute for the lake.
Well, there are ways,
given this order,
it's not going to happen within the scope of this particular order.
Yeah.
When the EPA comes in, they'll probably make them do that. So
we will see. But yes.
Yeah.
So I would like to conclude the discussion of 4E unless somebody insists on talking about this more.
Well, there's one more thing that I would add to this.
Okay.
Their claim that this is a hotspot that needs to be remediated in that large area is only based on 2 wells that are within a few dozen feet of each other, near where they already have a pipeline. So they can say, well, that pipeline doesn't have the capacity. Well, you put that pipeline in. The fact that you didn't know how much dioxin was going there does not exonerate you from having to additionally put in the pipeline. And because of the confidentiality agreement, we don't know if there's any other data that shows whether those 2 wells are the only wells that show those high levels of concentrations. This relates back to the confidentiality agreement. And
I understand.
The only way we know what's going on under the ground is with the data. That's the only way we know what the dioxin levels are down there.
I agree.
And as long as Gelman can withhold that data or keep it secret and force the interveners to keep it secret, how can we as the public weigh in on a solution when we haven't even seen whether the problem is properly defined? You define a problem before you throw solutions at it.
As Beth has pointed out, we do maintain the hope that the EPA will resolve some of these issues for us. So with that, I haven't been checking the chat window closely enough. Katie wanted to speak to 4D.
Well, I threw it in there, but just in terms of 4D and the Tetra Tech issue, one thing that Debbie reached out to the EPA, and I couldn't get myself unmuted early enough and get the exact wording here. They looked into if there was a conflict of interest or not. They ended up determining that there wasn't, but because of all of the attention that was going on with Tetra Tech, even though we know that there's a separation between Tetra Tech and Patti and the Detroit Tetra Tech office and all the different Tetra Techs, they are still going to move forward with a different contractor from a different EPA office. They haven't let us know who that contractor is going to be yet, but they're anticipating moving forward with that work, anticipating that will have to happen before the end of the month. So we've reached out to figure out exactly who that contractor will be. But that's just a little background there, and they're hoping to begin that site inspection again before the end of the month.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Of course.
Any comments on that? Moving on to 4F. This is the Ann Arbor Drinking Water Alternatives update. This isn't attributed to anybody, so I'm going to turn to Kathy Knoll first, because I understand that they've passed a resolution in the township. Kathy Knoll.
Okay. Multitasking here. Yes, so Ann Arbor Township passed a resolution. They sent it on to SIO. SIO has also passed, it's essentially the same resolution, encouraging the city to pursue the updates in their current water treatment plant. I think Mike mentioned this at our last meeting, or at some meeting, you mentioned it, Mike. I don't remember which one it was, but the copy of, I think a copy of the resolution was shared.
Okay.
With this group.
And Mike, do you have anything to add?
No, when I was drafting the resolution, I had checked with Will to see if they had anything drafted yet, and he said not. But if we drafted one, he'd like to see what we drafted. And so after it was approved by our board, I sent it on to him.
Okay. Kathy Griswold?
Jeff Hayner actually had his hand up first.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean that as a slight, Jeff.
That's all right. I mean, either one of us. I just comment that we had a good presentation on the 13th about it. And I think it was pretty clear that it's really not a good choice. I think I want to thank the other municipalities who receive our water for doing what they're doing to speak up about it, because it's not just Ann Arbor. And I think that is a real understanding that water autonomy is important to the city, and also the quality of the water could suffer. And there's just too many concerns over the switch beyond financial. And I actually had a nice long conversation with some field guys over the last 2 days at the water department, just about everything. And they don't like the notion of it either. And then some of them don't even live here in the city. And the guy said, if I lived here in the city, I'd move if we switched to GLWA. I mean, we like our water. It's calcium heavy. I replace a lot of ball valves and seats and stuff in my business, but it's good water, and I'm glad we're taking that course. I know it's a big investment, 110 million. It's going to end up being 120 million in redoing plant 2, but as long as we build it properly with the capacity that it needs for the growth of the communities around us, I think we're gonna be okay with that. So that's all I wanted to say on that.
Kathy?
I want to formally thank Ann Arbor Township and SIO Township for passing resolutions, and also point out that the Environmental Commission passed a resolution in support of the water treatment plant. And this was done without my knowledge to begin with. It was initiated by Stephen Brown, the chair of the Environmental Commission. So I believe there's broad support. What I'm troubled by is the amount of staff effort that has gone into exploring another option, the Great Lakes Water Authority. The incorrect information that was originally provided, and it just seems like the tail is wagging the dog. I mean, it's very basic. We have resolutions that have been passed by council, unanimously passed, that don't get implemented very quickly or at all. And in this case, we have a project that an unnamed council member asked us to explore. And no one will even say who that council member is. So just like the EPA, I'm always a bit cautious of where the decisions are being made and what the direction is. This is very troubling. And I want to acknowledge all the community members who provided technical expertise, and those who called in on the night that City Council had a work session on this. I think that was very valuable as well. My last statement, though, is it seems like community members are constantly having to work to right the ship that seems to constantly be wobbling about, being the City of Ann Arbor. And I don't know how we keep getting off course, but I am very thankful for all of the community members who are out there helping us. Thank you.
So Vince.
Thanks, Kathy. I appreciate the council members for standing up for the community. I don't know how this even got to where it got, because it makes no sense by most standards. And Dan Bicknell and Rita Caruso made comment, which I thought was very helpful and very informative. And I appreciate them spending the time and effort to do that. Unfortunately, like you said, it probably was unnecessary. We shouldn't be going down this route. It's just so many reasons not to. And I think the townships, are really interested in what's going on here, because it's a backup for them to have Ann Arbor water. And if we go to the Great Lakes Water Authority, it's going to be hard on the township. And we let Gelman Plume just go wild. That's not a good thing for the whole community. So I appreciate everybody's effort on that. It was pretty tough.
So I would add to that, if Dan Bicknell was here, I would thank him for his work on this particular issue as well. He submitted a good analysis to city council members on this subject. With no further hands in the air, I'm going to move on to number 5A. This is an EGLE update, so I'm going to let Dan take this over. Dan?
He looks frozen.
Yeah, no, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
I had it on mute. I was, let me expand out here. Basically, I was going to give a little update on the court-ordered work plan. Well, what is asking here, I read this as what they are doing to implement the court order. And they have been, like I said, I keep in contact with them and discuss this at least once a month with Brody. Some of the things that they have since the last card meeting, I wanted to identify that TW29, which was the replacement well on Maple that Congresswoman Dingell visited when we were drilling it. That is now connected and up and running. So TW29, we will start getting new information, data, sampling data monthly from that. I will be getting a package of those activities related to the TW29, including the well log and any vertical profiling data here in the near future. The Evergreen, if in the eastern area, the Evergreen area, The extraction wells that are identified in the CJ order, at the IW2 and the Rose well, those are two identified. They have got access to the IW2 area from the private property owner. They want to, will convert or planning to convert that well to an extraction well. IW2 was an injection well historically. They're going to be converting that, but they also wanted access to that location because that's where they're going to put a vault in to tie all this new infrastructure together. And it's near the Evergreen, the house they own up there, that they run the Evergreen pumping, infrastructure, connect to the pipes and all the electrical and the processing units, and then the pipeline that goes back to the treatment building. So they have finalized access. I believe they're just waiting for to make a payment to that property owner for a final signature. The Rose well, I'm going to say Rose and Valley area, the roadways, they are going to be installing 3 test borings in that area to finalize a location, the best location for the Rose well that's mentioned in the CJ order. So they have applied for right-of-way permits to do those to Ann Arbor to do that in the right-of-way, those test borings. And that'll be coming up. It's in there. Ann Arbor is reviewing that permit application. So that'll be coming up here in the near future, that they'll install those test borings and identify a final location for the Rose well. They have also, one of the requirements was the prohibition zone expansion, well ID portion of it. They have to, in the expanded areas, they have to confirm that there's no wells being used. And they reached out and got city assistance from their database, GIS system, and they paid the city for that assistance. So they got all that information from City of Ann Arbor and are compiling that. So that is required under the CJ order, that they do that confirmation, that identify all wells and to make sure no one's using the water in those prohibition zone expanded areas. In the western area, they have most of the access for the western area monitoring wells, except for 1 or 2 locations that are in the final process. They basically, some corporate properties, they have to go back to corporate to get the final access approvals. So they have moved since last month. They have acquired access in the western area for getting installing the monitoring wells. I think I've stated this before. What they want to do is get all the accesses in place and then start installation. They have identified to me that Cascade Well Drilling Company will use Cascade Well Drilling, and once they start out there, they want to keep the a rig, multiple rigs in place. So they have to have these keep going, not just start and stop, mob, demob. It's more costly. So they want to have all these in order before actually starting the actual drilling. But they hope to, keep things rolling once they start drilling on monitoring. The extraction well stuff will be done first. Prioritizing that, we had identified that is a priority, is let's get the extraction wells in, notwithstanding the Park Lake well. We had the previous discussion about that. So that, and then the monitoring in the western area is their next priority. And then they are also reviewing access locations. They don't have access agreements in the eastern area. There's monitoring wells in the eastern area, Sentinel wells, and those types of that are identified in the CJ order. So that'll be the third leg of investigation. So they are also then, as part of the discussion here tonight, was that TW24, that new extraction well they have. That is one of the 3 phase 1 extraction wells on property that are in the CJ order. And that has been connected. They have started sampling, pumping with that. As Roger said, we had 3 samples, very high concentrations, 1900 to 2200 or 2100 parts per billion. So they're working out their geochemistry. Basically, they are working on their treatment train and have for the pre-treatment and post-treatment to make sure they stay within their current NPDES permit for discharge. So it's off and on. They got it turned on, but then they had problems with bromate, for example. So they're doing the work that you have to do in a treatment system, in a treatment train to keep it within the permit with pre-treatment of the contaminated groundwater, and then post-treatment of treated groundwater before they can be discharged. So that well is installed. That's one of 3 that are proposed, and they are planning on doing the other 3 extraction wells here. I believe probably will start once the drilling starts. They will install those as part of this whole process once with the drill rigs on site or in the area. So there'll be 2 other phase 1 extraction wells. And then with a potential, if you remember from the CJ order, a potential of 3 additional phase 2 extraction wells on the property. Again, that determination, that decision will not be made until after the first phase is in and some analytical, some sampling, some pumping and treating, some sampling is done. So, but it is mentioned in the CJ as potentially additional extraction well locations on the property. They are doing design work, preliminary design work on the burn pit area, that heated SVE system that is identified in the CJ order. And I already mentioned that they, are working on the NPDES permit for the first sister lake. So that is another thing that they are working on. Is required under the court order. And so they've made some very good progress to be able to get started with drilling activities here in the near future.
Mike, Moran?
Yes, I got a little bit confused, I think, Dan, when you were starting your conversation about the prohibition zone. Gilman may have reached out to the city. I'm not aware they've reached out to Ann Arbor Township, and I don't know if they've reached out to Scioto Township, both of which have a stake in the issue of the expansion of the prohibition zone. So then later you switched to some discussion in the eastern area. So I'm not sure if at first when you said that you were talking just about the western area or not. But at any rate, it seems they're being a little selective so far, or maybe just taking the low-hanging fruit. I don't know, but
It's true. I can't answer that. That's the update that I got from Jim Brody on behalf of Gelman of what some of the tasks, the court order implementation tasks is how I'll describe them, what they are doing. So they are required, like there's a prohibition to the north and prohibition zone expansion to the south. So they are required, as the court order identifies, to identify wells. So they, maybe are doing Ann Arbor, assistance from Ann Arbor first. So I will, ask about that and try to bring back additional information in the next, next report, update report.
yeah, thanks, Dan. I'll check in Ann Arbor Township to see if there's been any contact with us, but yeah. Thanks for your update.
So any other questions or comments on this item? So I think Dan covered both the work plan and what's new. Is that correct?
Well, I have some other what's new.
Oh, go ahead.
I can give you, Roger. We are updating our the data, our web page We're in the process of doing that. One of the things that you have always told me that our webpage is awkward as far as doing search in for documents that have been, that have been posted. Our people are, and I'm not the database person, Roger, so Socrata tables are going to be incorporated into that are searchable tables that you have always said that you wanted. That's something that will be incorporated into the update. Don't have a date when that will be done, but I'm working with our web person, and they have things in draft form per se, so that the web page will have a little different picture to it. We will still have some of the categories that are on there, like under what's new, under maps, but not all the stuff will stay, there, because there's a lot of historic stuff, old stuff that still is just on the web page, but that will be in these tables, so you can always search with keywords and key, search criteria to see what has been posted historically. So I wanted to give that as an update. You may have heard as part of the implementation in the CJ in the western area, there is a groundwater surface water interface evaluation, a GSI for short, and a work plan required. They have submitted that work plan to us. We are in the process. That was required on August 30th. We are in the process of reviewing that work plan, including tomorrow. I will be presenting that work plan to our groundwater GSI technical and program support TAPS for short TAPS team, which are the experts in EGLE on the groundwater surface water interface evaluations and requirements. So Jim Brody and I will be presenting that work plan. As soon as that presentation is done, my plan is to, we are required to approve or not approve the work plan here before the end of October. And then I will post that as part of the, as a work plan on the webpage. But that's another work plan, another CJ order requirement that they have, that we're in the middle of evaluating that. And that basically is, they are going to be checking all the surface waters in the western area and at locations, strategic locations that could have an exposure pathway of risk for contaminated groundwater venting to surface water. So they're going to be doing investigation activities, shallow borings, sampling, and areas like the marshy area and along the unnamed trib. They want to do that in the winter, so we are getting the work plan in place prior to that because it's just easier to work in wetter areas, in winter when the vegetation has been knocked down because of the winter, but also, putting, I think historically they have put plywood or ways to get out there to do sampling with geoprobe and that type of thing. So that groundwater surface water work plan will be posted here.
Dan, what is the GSI number right now? Just to follow up.
GSI number that is promulgated, the criteria is 280. That relates to on the west, in the eastern area too, along Allen Creek Drain. The GSI venting to surface water. So eventually venting in the eastern area to Huron River, if you remember, that number was 2,800 back with the third amended CJ. And that was one of the reasons they used to not, this third amended CJ required or said, hey, you're not allowed to have anything greater than 2,800 going past Maple Road, because the GSI criteria was 2,800. So if you didn't have a 2,800, it can't vent greater than 2,800 in the Huron River eventually. Well, the new criteria is 280, which is significantly, an order, a magnitude less. So this GSI investigation is integral in the western area, because they're, as Roger pointed out, just look at some of the new extraction. Well, TW24, it's 1900 ppb, And that's, and you look at quarterly reports, they're high numbers right adjacent to the unnamed trib and stuff. So they're going to be evaluating that, and that we are evaluating their, reviewing the work plan right now.
Oh, if it starts
and
to
you said
vent
you
into
weren't gonna-
basements, it's going to be a different issue.
I didn't hear you, Vince, I'm sorry.
If it starts venting at the basements, it'll be a different issue. The number will be much lower.
We're going to observe the hand raising rule here, and we're going to go to Rita Locke Caruso here next. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Hi, Dan. I just wonder if you could clarify, what is the screening level for residential groundwater volatilization to indoor air? Because a couple of us were looking at some of the tables that were published, and I know Bob sent you an email on this, but just recently.
I was going to comment on that tonight. I can do that.
Right.
I am not the VI person, again, in our district. Andrea is on the line too. She could help if she has a comment here. But the two tables that you identified, Bob, one of them is the actual criteria table. And then there you had identified that for 1,4-dioxane for volatilization, dioxane is not likely to volatilize. It's NLV. And the other table that you identified, that is in the volatilization to indoor air guidance document that we had. We have made modifications to that, certain appendices. And what you quoted was an appendice in that document that had been upgraded this last year that had numbers in it relating to they aren't criteria. They are only screening levels to identify whether there could be a potential risk. So that's the clarification. And I'll get a better, from the people that actually, I'll get a better description for you. But the one is a criteria table. You have to meet that to close the site. The other one is a screening level. The other table is a screening level that could be used by EGLE consultants, owners and operators, to determine, hey, if you aren't above that, then maybe you might, you're likely not going to have an immediate risk, but you may also have to do some more work if you're getting close, like a site-specific evaluation. So we try to give guidance to people to allow them to review their sites, that's the difference between the two tables. One's a criteria, it's promulgated. It's the 7.2 is a criteria. The 280 is a criteria. Those are promulgated. The other ones are screening levels that we will allow people to utilize and to generate lines of evidence to show that, hey, they don't have a risk at a site. That pathway is not complete, so there's not a risk that way. So, but I'll get a better, go ahead, I'm sorry.
So, but my memory, and I did not pull the table up in front of me, but my memory is that that table that has the promulgates and has, calls it a screening level on that table, but maybe I'm wrong, but my memory is it calls it a screening level, and then it says NLV. And then, so I guess my question is there a number or isn't there that is allowable for residential groundwater in terms of risk for infiltration to indoor air?
Right now, as I understand it, there's not a promulgated number, which means a law. We don't have a number that says, okay, if you're below that, you can close your site. So even though it says screening, it said that you got to watch there. You mesh two programs. There's part 201, and then there's part 213, the underground storage tank, which is the risk-based, it's risk-based screening numbers. So the criteria are the same for both, but they're called in the wording of the law, they're called different things. So that first table was a promulgated criteria that that is allowed under the law, and you can close the site with those numbers. The other one are some of the new guidance document updates that we've done based upon based upon new iris information and all that stuff. And again, I'm getting outside my comfort area, Rita.
Okay.
About
Me too, to be honest.
Okay.
Which is why we asked the question.
We
Yeah.
present that out so people can start utilizing that, and we can utilize that to see if there's a potential risk for, and then maybe they'll have to request, and then you can request, for example, site-specific numbers for groundwater, and that goes to our toxicologist group, and that's what a lot of people do is they request those site-specific numbers, and that would be based on the geology, sands, clays, silts, what is the geology of where the groundwater is in. So again, I'm just doing a very quick and probably poor summary. We do have we have a vapor VI TAPS team, so that we can go to, but that's what I saw in the tables that was sent to me. Those are that quick little difference there.
Thanks.
Okay. I'm going to call on Roger, but I'm going to remind him he's next on the agenda. So there you go.
Before I go into my thing, I wanted to ask Dan a couple of questions. One is relating to the revised EGLE Gelman website, and I appreciate that you're finally getting around to revising it. I guess the first question on that is, does EGLE care what its users think about that site?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure we care. I mean,
Okay, all right, that's all I need to know.
The web pages.
Then should, when are we going to be asked what we think should be prominent on the website, and some of our ideas of how to make the website better? You mentioned that a couple of things that you must have passed along for me, but I don't recall ever talking to anybody who sets up that web page. It seems, as a website developer in the past myself, the way to know whether a website is going to be good or not is to ask the users what do they need, and get ideas from the users.
Roger,
is that ever brought up? Was that ever brought up at any of your meetings with the website people?
well, I bring up what some of your concerns are, definitely.
No, but to actually meet,
As far as meeting with stakeholders,
with the user, to have the developers talk directly with the users of the website.
Well, Roger, I know, I mean, you told me that. I don't disagree with that as a good approach.
Was that dismissed then? It seems like that's just a natural thing that you do. You ask the users, how's this, what ideas do you have? And you maybe have a beta version that we can review to make sure that the suggestions are implemented the way we discussed. As somebody from the tech world, I can't imagine how we're paying taxpayer money for this website. Why aren't you using best practices to make the best website? So that's my feedback to the website.
I'm not in that group, Roger. I know that the websites are done so they are consistent across the state, meeting whatever requirements that the Department of Management and Budget requires for state, for outfacing state, outfacing web pages for state of Michigan, for example.
But that's an independent issue.
Well, that I don't disagree with you, but I just want to point out that we are updating we're going to be updating the web page. So
it reminds me of when Gelman complained to DEQ about the Gelman website because they're not doing it for any of the other sites in the state. I said, well, show me another site that's as prominent and as important as the Gelman site. But and the Gelman site might be a model for how to do websites for these other sites that are popping up. The other question I had related to the work plan that you mentioned that you're going to share. You've already got the work plan. You're going to review it. And then it's only going to get shared if you approve the work plan. Is that what I hear?
Well, no, I will post the work plan. Roger, we are on a short time frame for that review. And so we have been concentrating on getting it set up so we can take it to the GSI TAPS team. And
Yeah, okay.
because of the
I
requirement,
just want to make sure that it's not a new it's not a new policy to,
no, we're not going to.
because always in the past, when there was a work plan from the Gelman,
It's
people go
public.
ahead and post it and say, we're going to review this. And then when you reviewed it, you post your review. It wasn't holding off on the work plan until you've had a chance to review it. The reason for that is part of the reviewing, we as CARD and other interested parties have been able to review work plans and give you suggestions that you may not have the time or staff to consider. So a lot of times the citizens and the local governments can weigh in on a work plan and influence your review of it. In other words, make it a better review. So there should be no reason to delay posting a work plan from the company. Wouldn't you agree?
That is a thought, yes.
Thank you. I guess that's all I have.
So anybody else wish to address something that Dan said under 5B? So then we're going to move on to 6. And if Roger, if at the end of each one of these items under 6, if you would stop and let others comment or pose questions, I'd appreciate it.
Good idea. All right. So I think everybody on the screen has gotten my email today that was a summary of the TW24 purge well. I put new in quotes because that well, according to its well log, was drilled almost 4 years ago. So we're just now getting information. We just this last month, got the well log for it, even though it was drilled more than 3 years ago. The sampling from that well was much higher than what Gelman was showing on its various plume maps for years. So there's something that's fishy about that. Why did they put a purge well there when their own plume maps doesn't show that high a concentration? Well, it's probably because they did some sampling and found higher concentrations. In fact, they probably went down to bedrock because that's what is indicated in the Rockworks data that, and I'll cover the Rockworks section later, but the data that's exported from EGLE's own Rockworks shows that the extraction wells seem to have been drilled all the way to bedrock. TW24's well log only shows it drilled 75 feet. So there might have been another well, a monitoring well associated with TW24 that indicated much higher concentrations. And as we talked about earlier, because of the confidentiality agreement, that data has been withheld from the public, maybe for 4 years. Just want people to be aware of that. The other major point about that, and you can go back and read the document I sent, but the other point was that because of those high levels at TW24, Gelman has already it already contributed to a NPDES permit violation in Gelman's discharge. Because, and it actually says that right in Gelman's monitoring report summary for August, that the violation of the 7-part pavilion permitted monthly average was caused in part by, quote, unanticipated water quality from the new well TW24. Now, that could mean high concentrations. That's the way I took it the first time I read it, is that unanticipated water quality, like higher concentrations of dioxin. But from what you just said, what Dan just said about doing some pre-treatment, there might be some other things in the water at TW24 that interfered with the treatment process. And we don't know what those other things are. Is it dimethylformamide, which we know was found about half the concentrations of dioxin in the early days and hasn't been followed since? Is it perhaps some PFAS that we know that Gelman used at some quantity that wasn't of any concern? But of course, we know PFAS is 1,000 times more dangerous, so even 1,000th the quantity might not be. Did Gelman use 850 pounds of PFAS? Because that'd be on the same scale as using 850,000 pounds of dioxin. Has anybody considered that? Anyway, something's going on at TW24. The company doesn't want anybody to know the data that led to putting TW24 there. And unless the interveners, lawyers, push the judge to demand that, we're not likely to get that data. The polluter's able to keep data about their compounds in our water secret, and that's just not right. So I'll pause there, and if anybody has any questions or comments about TW24 and the results and the fact that they had already had a NPDES violation relating to that, we'll take questions, comments. Jack? You're muted, Jack.
Yes, I am. I have no questions. Does anybody else have a comment or question on TW24? I guess you can move along.
By the way, I want to give Jack a hand about how this meeting has moved along in spite of all the different issues that have come up. So I'm going to try to keep that going. The Rockworks modeling and the public engagement over it, this relates back to the website also. In fact, let me do a new share because I think I have the Rockworks somewhere here. I might have to bring it back up again. Hold on a second. I need like 3 screens instead of 2 on my computer here. Rockworks. There it is. New share. As I said before, this effort by EGLE is a good first step in helping define some things, but it's only a first step. And one of the issues, if you read carefully in the documentation that accompanies the Rockworks work, they go into a lot of detail of how much data cleanup the team had to do in order to get to this point. And I appreciate that because I had to do the same thing every year when I do my Google Earth mashups. And last month I asked Dan, or since last month, I guess it was, I asked Dan Hamel, how do we get corrections made when we find data problems in the Rockworks data? And the answer was that anticipate that they're going to be updating that annually. So there'll be 2021 data will be updated. So sometime in maybe by February of 2022, we'll have a new version of this Rockworks thing. Now, the roadblock to that is that they're going to have to do the same data cleanup they had to do on the added data that they had to do on the data to date. And that's really in Gelman's ballpark. Gelman is not in the business of cleaning up their data. They don't care if the data has to be, if we have to spend taxpayer money in order to present their data to the public. And that should change. There should be some standards about what makes good data, what about the data can be changed to make it easier to update the information about Gelman's dioxin in our waters of the state, so that the public, the stakeholders, all decision makers can have access to that data in usable fashion. There's a number of layers that could be added to Rockworks, and I've sent Dan a preliminary list of those ideas. And just like with the website, I would like to talk to the team that does the Rockworks to see if I can help them understand why some of these other layers are needed and what tweaks can be made to current layers. I'll just point out a couple things here. The city is concerned, if everybody's seeing, are you all seeing the Rockworks screen here? My cursor moving around in the
Rockworks model, yeah.
All right, so we're worried about this high concentration here in the middle of the plume. The city, working with Larry Lemke, has said, well, we're worried about this plume going north and hitting these two tributaries. Oh, wait, the tributaries aren't even on the Rockworks base map. There's a tributary here and there's a tributary here. They don't show on this. This tributary does, and this, of course, is the one I'm worried about for all this dioxin that's at DuPont Circle going northwest through this area. Maybe bypassing all of these de facto monitoring wells that happen to be homeowner wells. I will say this about the Rockworks vertical modeling. They show that there is a pathway here, a pathway that's not shown on the Gelman cross-reference diagrams. That whole cross-reference thing is another thing. We can leave that for another time, but just so people know that there is a, Rockworks shows that there is a pathway through this area here that could make it out through here. The other thing that Rockworks shows is that there's a lot of undefined, discontinuous points. Like here's the 7 parts per billion line, I believe this is. Well, it ends here. So we don't have enough sampling here to know where this dioxin is. Similarly down here, and surprisingly, down here through the Saginaw Forest. Is this really heading down here to these homeowner wells past Liberty? The Rockworks model is only good as the data that gets put into it. And of course, it's not all of the data, as I've kept saying over and over. I have data from the company from 1995 and before, 80% of which is not in the database used for Rockworks. So I just want people to know that just because this looks this way, it's only because the modeling predicts that this is where it is. The modeling can be used to say, here's where more monitoring should be done. And then the model gets refined, but only if there's budget and will to do the modeling updating. Now, Dan thinks it's going to be, they plan on doing this update every year. But again, it's not going to be easy because the data isn't as clean as it could be. I'll leave it there and take questions and comments at this point.
Go ahead, Vince.
Yeah, okay, thanks. Yeah, thanks, Roger. I think that reading Rockworks charge basically is that they are asked to do public engagement. And I think it would be great if we could get them to do public engagement, take questions, take suggestions, and help the public understand what they're presenting, what they have, because it's very, I think, sophisticated and more than we've had in a long time. And it's a different take on what's out there. And I think it would be useful to have a public engagement effort by them. And it's in their charge. So I think we could ask for it. Thanks.
Good idea. Anyone else? In fact, Vince, I'm willing to host a training session to show what I know, what I've learned about, so that other people can take it from there and maybe ask more relevant questions once they know all the features of it. And, you know, maybe they point out some parts of it that I'm sure that they will see some things that I don't see. So it's a very useful tool. It's just not, it needs to continue and needs to be refined.
Well, maybe CARD should ask for a public engagement.
Yeah, but even before we get the public engagement, we can do our own public. Because I don't think we've done that. We did that with the Google Earth, but I'm willing to do a training session for anybody that wants it in a pretty rapid fashion for Rockworks, because I think it's important that people learn how to use this.
I agree. So you're 20 minutes into your 25.
Okay, I got a couple more. Let me.
Yep, I know that. I'm encouraging you.
I gotta go back. Share. There's my new share. Let's see if this is still there. Agenda. Okay, this is the resolution for shallow monitoring testing in the West Park area. We've drafted this resolution, and was emailed out eight days ago, and everybody who's eligible to vote should have received that. I think I even have that resolution here somewhere.
Has everyone had an opportunity to read the resolution?
Yeah, the bylaws state that they have to have it in advance to check it out, so to speak.
Well, we circulated it 8 days ago, but that doesn't mean that they read it. I'm just asking, has everyone had an opportunity to read that? And are there any questions regarding the content of the resolution that Roger's offering at this point? It's my understanding that all eligible voters can vote for or against approving this resolution. And I just want to know if there's any eligible voter who intends to vote against it and whether they would like to speak on the reasons for their opposition. So then with that, I'm going to offer the resolution that was circulated 8 days ago and ask if you are in favor of it, you raise your hand. All right, and are there any votes in opposition to this resolution? Seeing none, I ask if there's any eligible voters who want to abstain from voting. Seeing none, the resolution's passed. I'm going to move on to the next item.
Yeah, I got to get back to that. 1 second.
Jeff Hayner, you have your hand raised. Do you want to?
Just real
Well,
quickly, I mean, I just make the assumption that at like our own, like at council or perhaps at township boards that, you know, we speak as a body. So I'm just, you know, if I abstain from these kind of votes, I encourage, I'm happy that they move forward, you know, like we'd speak as a body, I assume, right, in our bylaws. So.
I'm sorry, Jeff, I didn't notice. Did you abstain?
Well, yeah, that's fine. I mean, I support it,
No,
but I also wonder if I should abstain, and I'm happy that it passed, but I assume that is part of our bylaws that we,
Yeah.
you know, it's like.
Yeah, we speak as a
anything else.
body.
Okay.
There are a variety of reasons a person could wish to abstain. That's why I offered that opportunity. If we're sending this resolution to council, I can see why you would want to. Yeah. Alrighty. Are you ready for 6D, Roger?
Yeah, basically, this kind of relates to the EGLE's Gelman website. What information do we need to have on a card website? And I'm suggesting that we look at what's already on the SRSW website as a model. And anybody here who wants to be on a subcommittee, or did we already set this up? I can't remember, to review what elements should be on a card website, knowing that this might be superseded by an EPA website when they take over, or merged into a community group website via the EPA. It also might be somewhat superseded by whether or not the EGLE Gelman website incorporates some of what we need, so we don't have to do it on our own. And all the more reason for EGLE to ask CARD members, what can EGLE do? So we don't have to do, CARD doesn't have to do its own website, especially if it's information that comes from EGLE. We don't have to repeat what they say. So Beth, did anybody volunteer already to be on the, I can't remember, did something we already covered?
I think we've just postponed it each month of actually formalizing a group. But I think people were giving you their feedback, but I don't know, we didn't really form a subcommittee, so.
Well, I'd like to do that. I'd like to get this moving, and that same subcommittee obviously can be involved in reviewing the EGLE's plan for their Gelman website. So it's not just what SRSW has that maybe CARD should have, but also what's on the EGLE website, or what should be on the EGLE website, so that we don't have to have duplication of effort. And
so I just assume
all the city, all the interveners, all the local governments should have somebody on this too, because their own websites should be able to point to different websites for key information.
So I just assume that I end up attending any subcommittee meetings. So there I am. I'm throwing my name out there. But I'd like to see you. Okay, are you taking notes there, Beth?
Yep.
Would Kathy or Jeff like to be on the subcommittee? Nope. They're kind of quiet now. How
About Mike Moran.
about Mike or Kathy from SIO?
This is beyond my technical competence.
Well, I think that it's important to have somebody that doesn't have technical competence say what it would be,
Exactly.
what it would be that they would look for when they get to a web page. I will tell you that the SIO Residents for Safe Water has a ton of information on their site, which is for me very difficult to navigate. So I think that me, as somebody who has no technical skills on web pages, can actually offer some insight as to how I would like to see a web page organized, so that if I'm looking for the 2006 settlement between the city and Gelman, it's easy to find it on a page full of historic documents or something, rather than just searching page after page. So I'm encouraging you, Michael, to to volunteer.
Well, I guess I was going to say, when you brought up when you were coming back, and I'm sure you will before the meeting's over, to the group is going to draft a resolution regarding the consent judgment, that I've got a lot of irons in the fire right now. And for that one, I would be happy to participate, but I no longer have access to legal research capabilities, which compromises my ability to be a first run drafter there. If you think I would be more helpful in this one, I'll take your request.
It's totally up to you. Kathy's got her hand raised.
I'll do it.
Thank you, Kathy. See, Mike, you don't need any technical expertise.
Yeah.
Any committee that has both Kathy and me on it shows that you don't need any web expertise at all. So anybody else?
Jack,
Right.
I'll point out one thing. When
Yes.
you're on the SRSW website
Yes.
and you want to find something, there's a search box.
Yeah.
And because it's a Gelman site, the search is actually very good.
Okay.
I use it.
All right. I will
unlike the Eagles website and the city's website and a bunch of other websites, the search actually works very well.
All right. I will
So
take
you don't
that.
need to know how to start.
So
Jack,
I think.
I'll join too.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah.
Write that down, Beth. All righty.
Yeah, I would also join in. I can't do it right now, but I don't know when we're going to start this. But I want to remind people that EPA, if they take this on as a Superfund, they will provide some funding, and significant funding, from my understanding. And that may be one of the things we really want to do, because websites are not easy. I've done a bunch, and it's hard to do, and it takes a lot of time. And I think, we know what we want, but getting there can be tricky. So just to put that out there.
All right.
Way to sell it, Vince.
Well, the reality is what it is.
Well, you're never done with a website. We set up SRSW's website in 1995, and it has some of the same content from 95. But as a result of evolving like that, step by step through different platforms, it kind of looks like a platypus.
So I note that Jeff Hayner has put a note in the chat window, and he also has his hand raised. So I'm going to call on him at this point in time.
Well, I was just going to say that. I mean, now I feel compelled to. I'll give my 2 cents on this, because I spent many years as creative director of a big internet company here in town, and I like doing the they call them wireframes now, but it's the outline for the site, and it is encompassing all the content, and it kind of tells the tale when you run through these various layers of these wireframe exercises, and I'd be happy to do that. And I'm trying to get back into that a little. So,
all righty. So I think we've got the basis for a subcommittee, and Beth will send out a note to everybody, and maybe we can do a poll as to when we can get together. So I'm done with 6D if everybody else is. We've got 4 minutes left. The non-agenda item, the resolution commending Roger Rayle passed last night. I'm happy that it passed, and I just cannot express my own appreciation for all of the things that Roger Rayle has done. Many years ago, I lived in Scioto Township, and I attended a meeting, and Roger was there at the beginning. So I appreciate his many years of hard work putting this together. Anybody else want to comment on item 7?
I just want to say again that it's not just me. It's the dozens of people who have been working on this since even before I got involved. Pat Ryan, my neighbor, who's passed away now, Vera Politis, Dimitri Politis, her husband is still alive. He's in his 90s, still on the SRSW board. There's been countless people who have contributed, and I tried to reflect that in my comments on the resolution that got passed. But I just want to keep reiterating that because it takes a village. The only way that we've gotten to this point is from involved citizens, knowledgeable citizens getting involved. And of course, that goes for elected officials as well.
So Jeff, do you still have your hand up from the last time?
I guess I do. I'll second what you said, Roger. I mean, I was happy that this came forward, and you like it or lump it, I guess you've sort of become the face of CARD right now. And so, to keep these great ideas in front of people and show that there's really things happening. And, we had to attach you to it, Roger, sorry. But it's the truth. I mean, if I hadn't come up to that table so many years ago, I don't even know. I think it was even pre-Mayor's Fair. I'm not even sure where it was, but you had a little card table out there somewhere and some maps. And I was horrified, justifiably horrified that nothing had happened since 88 or whatever, when I had last thought about it. And, so thanks. It's been great.
Go ahead, Kathy.
Yes, as Roger said, it really is a team effort, but every high functioning team needs a leader who can empower people and want people to join the team and get work done. And so I want to personally thank Roger for that leadership.
Vince?
Yeah, I would like to thank Roger for all his effort. It's just yeoman's work that he's been doing all these years. But the resolution does say CARD as well. So, the people in CARD have a lot to be proud of as well. And as a team, we've actually done quite a bit. And I'm amazed at how well things have moved along. And largely Roger's the leader, and he's got a lot of knowledge and ability. Thanks.
Alrighty. So then, are there any other non-agenda items that anybody wants to discuss? Seeing none, I just want to remind you that our next meeting is November 2nd at 6 p.m. It's election day, but I'll see you here anyways. Anything else?
Don't be afraid to vote no on things. It's okay to say no sometimes.
Mike has his hand up.
Who does?
Yeah, Mike.
Oh, go ahead, Mike. I'm sorry.
I was just going to ask Jack if you were going to double back at this point, or if you want to talk offline about resolution drafting or what.
Oh, to remove the confidentiality agreement.
Yeah.
I thought we voted on that.
No, you deferred it to the end because there were no volunteers.
Someone to draft it.
Oh, yeah. So then you're volunteering, Mike?
Well, what I was saying is that I'm willing to work with others on it. The problem is that I'm not in a position right now to be the first drafter. I don't have access to legal research capabilities, so we could research the court rule and so forth. But I'm willing to work with others who maybe have that access. And
similarly, I don't have that access. Are there any lawyers in the room that still have electronic research access? we'll have to work on that.
Okay, we'll stay in touch.
All right.
Ralph's still on the screen.
Ralph's even more retired than I am.
He's got more time then.
I'm pretty retired, you know, so I don't have access to a lot of that stuff. But alrighty.
Dude, I'm retired too.
So then with that, that concludes our meeting. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jack.
Thank you.
Good job.
We ran over 2 minutes, and that's
Oh,
really,
God.
it's really
Congratulations.
embarrassing to me. All right.
It happens. It happens. You know, we started 3 or 4 minutes late too, so.